You might catch yourself sliding in and out of it. Just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. Using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind. The natural state of the brain is chaos. Chaos is beautiful.
Madhu, Dasa, what's up, man?
Hey, grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm grateful to have you. So the way I normally like to get things started is just kind of like getting you to introduce yourself and just, tell my listeners just a little bit about what it is that you do and what your mission is and, what you're about. So.
Okay, well,
go right in.
In short, I always like to address the elephant in the room, and that is that people say, what is this monk stuff? Long story short, I became a monk, shaved my head, put on orange robes, and moved to India on my 18th birthday, which is, I know, not exactly what every 18-year-old young man does. But I went to India and I spent 6 months there. They'd kick me out after that because of visa purposes, but I'd spend the other 6 months in monasteries in the West. And for about a half a decade, that was my life because I was totally dissatisfied with the traditional path that I was being pushed towards in school. And I mean, I graduated high school at 16, not because I'm smart, because I figured out I get the heck out of this place as soon as possible. Went to college a little bit, but I was like, this isn't my dharma,
not
per se. Yeah. And so, on my 18th birthday, I became a monk and spent years studying the Bhakti Yoga lineage and tradition, where I was primarily learning the functions of controlling the mind. As a monk, the primary purpose there is if you learn to control the mind and the senses, then you can ultimately be successful in whatever area of life that you want to focus in according to your unique psychophysical nature and gifts. And then after graduating the monastery, I did what most other healers and holistic folks do, and that is burnt myself out in the name of service and exhausted myself and got a immune disease and got exhausted and had no money to my name because I was doing everything as a service and donation based, and that didn't work. So after about 2 years of exhausting myself, I was like, I got to figure this out. And so I started to, figure it out and take lots of different trainings around getting comfortable on money and learning how to monetize my services. And then after creating a multiple six-figure business around Ayurveda and holistic health, about 2.5 years ago, I transitioned to more helping other people who are in the holistic space also be able to monetize their dharma, as we like to say, and functionally be able to support oneself while sustainably supporting others.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And that resonates with me quite a bit. I do I teach meditation, and everything I do is donation based. So, and I'm coming up on that 2-year point where it's like, and I'm like, kind of burnt out. So yeah, no, that I totally get that. I understand exactly where you were at because I'm there right now. So, so as far as figuring that out, what did that end up culminating and looking like for you? What was your path for figuring out the way to not burn yourself out yet be able to support yourself doing service work? Absolutely.
Well, it was a progression. I would like to say I was smart enough to just make one little shift and then, wow, everything worked out. But the progression looked in simple like this: is the first step was knowing that a drowning lifeguard can't save any, but a strong lifeguard can save many. And so in the name of serving others and depleting myself, I'm actually not helping really anyone in ultimate sense. And so the first step was identifying that I need to make sure that I myself, say, am a strong enough swimmer, for the analogy of a lifeguard, and so that I'm taken care of in terms of my mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health, and prioritizing that first. And then on the other end is figuring out the language of money, or just the systems of finance, and just learning how does money trade hands, because that's all it ever does, is just constantly motion, moving. Even people think my money doesn't move. I put it in the bank. Oh, it's moving. Someone else is just moving it.
Yeah.
And, and so all that energy of money, or in Sanskrit, we say Lakshmi, that energy is constantly moving. How to position yourself in such a way and serve and contribute in such a way that, money also comes into your hand, and then it goes out into a direction that you can really make a positive impact for. So first step always in figuring out how to strengthen myself, which just look like learning to overcome my autoimmune disease, learning how to everything from just applying all the things I learned as a monk in terms of holistic health to myself and, making sure my diet, my sleep, all the basics were there. Making sure I was purposeful, making sure I was actually in integrity with my services. So there's that inner work. And then there's also just the education, just like learning how to become an expert snowboarder. You got to spend some time with great snowboarders and learn, you got to put your feet like this and you got to lean this way. And then when you come up to, and you learn every little detail and every little step. And so what that wound up looking like after many years of study, I've probably spent well over $100,000 in everything from like sales and marketing to courses and this, that, the other, to try to learn what actually works. And I've wound up rejecting a good portion of what I learned there because a lot of it's based off of high pressure manipulative tactics, how to get someone to buy your stuff. And so that's why we came up with what's called the conscious closing method, which is functionally just how to sell yourself without selling your soul.
That sounds pretty important. You definitely don't want to lose, your integrity while making money. I'm a Buddhist practitioner, and one of the biggest things for us is right livelihood. So it can be difficult to balance for sure. It's a difficult, it's a razor's edge, so to speak, between actually being able to support yourself and teach such things as you teach and that I am involved with, and do it with integrity and without losing your own sense of ethics in the process. So it's awesome that you've been able to do that. How long would you say it took you to figure that out, your conscious closing method?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually would attribute that method I attribute it to what I learned as a monk pretty much. And what that looks like is, so I became a monk on my 18th birthday. And then one of the services that I had was to go to universities and teach meditation. And, because my nature is I'm, I guess, decent with my words, and I don't mind interacting with people. And that's what excites me. Just like some other monks, their nature is they want to go cook for the residents. They also want to cook for, others and distribute the food to the masses. Some other people like to sit and study the thing and give the internal class. Everyone's engaged according to their natures. And for me, it was a mood of giving. And so through a lot of trial and error of going and talking to other people who were pretty much a similar age group, but they were like, well, you're very interesting with the shaven head and the orange robes, and this is very weird. And learning how to present something that I had full faith in, which was this dharmic philosophy, the philosophy of the self and the philosophy of service, something I had full conviction in and full training in. How can I present this in such a way to people that they, number one, will know that they actually want and need it, and then two, in a way that's going to feel very organic and fluid. And so after years of being a monk, you kind of learn how to present things in such a way, because you look like a weird, unusual person, especially like in your early 20s with a shaved head. It's like, what do you stand for? There's like, what do you got going on? So I was almost forced to learn how to present information in a way that was palatable and accessible. And so after graduating, it just wound up translating naturally. And then also, don't get me wrong, making and losing and flubbing lots of sales calls and talking about our prices helps a lot as well, but has helped. But ultimately, I took some of those principles there, and then I took what works in the industry. And spending so much time, attention, money into these types of courses, trainings, certifications, etc. I learned okay, what actually does work? And then what are the areas of that just are a little slimy, greasy, a little, and just, cut those out. And then how do I replace those? And it functionally boils down to one differentiation, which there's a lot of way it manifests. But the one differentiation is we use what's called abundance-based frameworks as opposed to scarcity-based. Scarcity means, how do I get someone to feel their pain and scare them into taking action? If you don't take action, this big problem is going to come up. And then what happens is people are acting off of fear, which is very low vibrational. And so rather we want to do abundance frameworks, which means here's where you say you want to be. Here's where you are. Here's the logical step ladder. I can, show you how to get there. Would you like to? And in this way, you're having people act off of inspiration, which means you're not getting nearly as many yeses, which is awesome. But those yeses you do get are the type of yeses you actually want, are real serious people who are ready to take the information and knowledge in.
Right on. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I have to ask, so you said when you got out of high school, you joined a monastery when you were 18. What propelled you to do that? I mean, at 18, I was still chasing girls and doing a lot of things I probably shouldn't have been doing. But it seems like, what was your mindset at that point to be like, I think this is what I want to do. I want to pursue this spiritual path.
Well, there's a beautiful word that we can all relate with to a certain extent. And this word carries so much innate ability to motivate someone to move in a direction. And that word is suffering.
Yes. Good old suffering.
Good old suffering, my old pal. And, I had this realization at somewhat of a young age, as a young teenager. I realized that even with the situation I was in, which was pretty fortunate. I mean, I didn't have like the bestest of lives, but it was like I very kind and loving parents who did their very best. And, I never went hungry. Like we never, never went without, never went with. It was very simple, but it was like I had all my bases covered. And in many ways, I consider myself outrageously fortunate, and still lots of suffering, internal suffering from the mind and from the body, external suffering from other living entities, this suffering caused by nature and everything, natural disasters to climate, whatever the case might be. There was just so much suffering that I was like, this is not very good. I don't like this. And so I started from a young age being interested in philosophy and theology, and really just starting to understand, like, okay, what even is this? Like, what is this biomechanical robot body thing? And like, who am I? And like, what is this world? And as I started studying philosophy and theology, I started to get more intrigued for two reasons. One is because I was learning a little bit, but the other was like, I wasn't getting lots of answers that were satisfying. A lot of places I would go would be like, hey, you asked too many questions. Like, no need to just have faith. I'm like, really? I don't like that. I'm like, I don't want to just have faith. I want it to make sense. Or other places where it'd be like, we don't really have an answer for that. And so I just kept getting more eager to try to find answers to ththese questions. And so when I was 16 years old, someone offered me $100 to read the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Okay. It's an ancient yoga literature. And it changed my whole life. It changed my whole perspective, because now it was the first time this kind of Eastern influence came over, where I went, oh, there's something more than, say, a couple of, the philosophy was like more modern philosophy. Right. Didn't really go past Greek or Roman philosophy. It's just, I was like, whoa, what is this? And then from there, something internally just unlocked, where I was like, okay, there's a vast amount of information here. And then I started to go to places that were studying the Bhagavad Gita and different other ancient Vedic literatures. And I finally got my answers. And it was the opposite experience, where it was like, hey, great question, ask more questions, and here's the answer. And the answers were actually sound and logical, which also was like a big problem for me. People give answers, I was like, what? This premise is wrong. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Or, so I finally was like, whoa, these people actually answer my questions. And then they were always just giving credit to the literature. They're like, thanks, but like, it's just here.
Right.
I was like, so I went in and I dove around, and I traveled to different types of, like temples and places where this knowledge was familiar. And then even as a 17-year-old, I wanted to become a monk, because I started hanging out with monks, and I was like, this is what I was going to school for, construction management architecture at college. And I was like, this seems to be a little bit more of my dharma,
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. It's interesting that like some of the first people you came across, like, were like, you asked too many questions. I find that to be like, I find that to be a wonderful quality, like just having and maintaining curiosity. Like for me, being a student, is, you always want to remain teachable. You want to remain a student. Like, you can never have too much knowledge. And, I feel like you always need to be learning. Yeah,
I don't disagree.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you ran across that, but it looks like you found your way to the path that was meant for you, and so to speak. So what would you say that one of your biggest takeaways from your time as a monastic is?
Yeah, well, I would say the oversimplification would be if you can learn to make arrangements for the mind to cooperate, life becomes much easier. And the purpose of a lot of the austerities, sacrifices, penances that you do as a monk, and an example being, you wake up at 3:30, do some collaborative meditation, do some few hours of individual meditation, do some studies and some classes in the morning. By the time you even eat breakfast, you've lived like a whole day practically, and then you go out and serve, and you just go out, and it's a life of just trying to contribute, and as opposed to trying to be a taker, trying to be a giver. And what that practice cultivates is a sense of internally learning how to not just listen to the mind, because the mind says, I don't want to take a cold shower. I don't want to, at least my mind says that all the time.
For sure.
And so the idea is, how do I work with the mind in such a way so it doesn't just sabotage me at every single step? And so that's the internal function. The external function is, how can I be of service, which is really where happiness comes from. And I always like to give this example that, they've done studies on, there's different ways to test levels of happiness. And they studied out of huge amounts of people, the happiest of all of them were new mothers. Even if they had children before, they still had some type of young infant, baby, child. Which makes no material sense, because the baby does nothing for the mom. Now, all the moms listening are going, no, my baby does a lot. I know. I mean to say the baby functionally contributes in no way, doesn't even know how to express love and gratitude, right? So how does it make sense that the mom is the happiest? It's because service is actually what provides us happiness. And that's why when we love people, we serve them. The way you know if somebody loves you is they contribute in some form of service towards you. And so really cultivating this mood of contribution as opposed to taking, because the material mind and ego say, yeah, this world is about me. I kind of am the center of the universe, huh? And releasing that type of artificial imposition of the mind and accepting this fact that I'm actually here to contribute.
Right on. So I've kind of done a little bit of research on this myself in my own practice. And I think that that's really the difference between happiness and fulfillment, right? Happiness is receiving something for yourself, and you get the thing, and then you're happy, and it kind of pings on that dopamine system a little bit. But the pro-tribal activities, the one where we are of service to others, that's more of functioning on the serotonin system. And so the serotonin actually is a much longer lasting agonist than the dopamine system. So, when we serve others, it fires off on the serotonin system, thus creating this fulfillment. And I think there is a difference, so to speak, between happiness and fulfillment. Like, you can be fulfilled and still not necessarily be happy, but it's good luck being happy without being fulfilled too. It'll happen, but it'll only last for like a brief time. We get the thing, and then immediately we're disenchanted with it, and then it's on the chasing the next thing.
Yeah, it's fleeting. And that's why, you said it so eloquently. And the idea of focusing on that fulfillment or that contentment is, you're still okay whether you're happy or distress comes. Like, things 100% of us can guarantee there's going to be things that brought us a few minutes of happiness and a few minutes of sadness, and whatever brings us happiness brings us the same amount of sadness. That's just how duality works. And so, to your wonderful point is that to the extent that we can focus on the fulfillment part, we become equiposed. When happiness or stress comes, it no longer becomes a measurement of success. It's not like happiness is success. It's like the fulfillment is a success, that you become okay no matter what's happening, the fluctuations around us, the duality around us.
Right. Yeah. Just truly being equanimous, I think, is the goal of any real spiritual practice. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then it's also just, it's the key to a simple and easy life, because otherwise, if you're dependent on things that are certain to change, there's not a lot of things we have 100% guarantee of in this world. But one of those is change. You like it, cool, it's going to change. You don't like it, cool, it's going to change. To the extent that we could just accept reality for what it is. And that is, some things are going to come that my mind conditioning ego do like, and they go, yay, this is nice. Some things it doesn't like. But if I could just learn to be okay and just accept reality as it is, as opposed to superimposing meaning to things where it doesn't belong. And when things happen, I just accept it. Just like when you look at a mountain, you're like, that's just a mountain. You're not like, oh, why can't that mountain be purple?
Right.
No, it's like, that's just a mountain.
They say that like equanimity is freedom from preference, right? And I think, Thich Nhat Hanh had this beautiful quote that he called equanimity radical inclusivity. So it's being able to incorporate every experience and every bit of life's phenomena and be content with that. And like, okay, right now it's like this. And, you and I both have the understanding that right now it's like this, but, right now and this will ultimately change. And, that can be disheartening when you're talking about holding on to the things that we love. But it can also be very freeing in the case of things like illness. And, you said that you dealt with an autoimmune disease and what was that experience like? And if you don't mind my asking, what was the autoimmune disease that you had at the time?
Absolutely. Well, it was Lyme disease.
Oh, wow.
There's two things. It was doubled up. So one is I got a parasitic infection from traveling in India. I got a little too lax with what I was eating and, I was traveling around, and long story short, I just remember someone handed me something to drink. I drank it. I immediately went, that was a problem. And I was like, uh-oh.
Whoops.
And it caused, anyway, without going into the details, which was just ruin everyone's days.
Right.
I lost like 30 pounds, and that's a big deal for me. I don't have a big stature. And so, I got emaciated. It was like a whole thing. And then I had to start to learn how to heal. And I went the Ayurvedic approach, which wound up leading me to becoming an Ayurvedic practitioner. And then I, not so long after, got bit by a tick in upstate New York while I was teaching like yoga, meditation, and for different trainings up there, not knowing that ticks were a problem. I just, with my shorts, walked around doing meditation in the woods by myself with nothing but shorts on in the middle of summer. And lo and behold, I got this beautiful 9-inch bullseye on my leg from a tick bite. Fortunately, I caught it relatively early on. And so it only causes me issues when I get really sick, and it just kind of dampens my immune system. So it's quite manageable in that way. But the primary way I've learned to manage it and heal through that so that it doesn't debilitate me on a regular basis is through the holistic practices of Ayurveda, and which primarily come down to just diet and lifestyle modifications and adjustments with some herbal infusion in there.
Right on. So if you don't mind my asking, what does your diet look like?
Sure. Yeah. I love, the more the questions, the merrier. And I'm always a big fan of, kind of to my point earlier, it's like, I'm a big fan of questions. So definitely please ask. The more challenging, the better too. The more vulnerable and intimate, the better.
Okay. Well, building into that, I do have another question. Could you explain the difference? I know there's a few different, I'm not even sure what to call them because I'm so uneducated as far as Ayurvedic practice is concerned, and hopefully you can enlighten me a little bit on that. I know that there's different body types as far as Ayurvedic is concerned. Could you maybe give some info on the different body types and maybe tell what yours is, and then we can talk about diet and how to eat properly for these different diets. Okay, thanks.
I love that. Yeah, don't threaten me with a good time. This is like, oh yeah, this is fun, and this is helpful too because I really encourage for everyone that's listening, as we start to break down some of these kind of pillars of Ayurveda here, the benefit is that you learn that there's no one size fits all, and that according to the laws of Ayurveda, everyone has different physical constitution, physical alignment, which pretty much just means the way that the different elements of this world, from earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc., are built in your body. And if you can learn to work with those elements in such a way that everything goes towards balance, then ultimately you can thrive. And so the way Ayurveda puts it is, as opposed to some of the Western perspective where it's like, this year spinach is a superfood, everyone should eat spinach. And then the next year a study comes out and it's like, spinach is toxic, no one eats spinach, it's going to kill you. And then the next year it comes out, it's like, turns out spinach is a superfood, but you got to cook it to break down the enzyme. And there's this idea of like, it just keeps moving. It keeps moving. Right. And so with Ayurveda, it's like, okay, for your body type, raw spinach, good. Your body type, no spinach. For your body type, as long as you cook, it's fine. So in this kind of general example, the idea is that we want to eat according to our unique physical situation. Mm-hmm. And so there's 3 primary subtypes, which actually in English, less than 50 years ago, someone took these contributions from Ayurveda and turned it into English terminology, which is also helpful: endomorph, ectomorph, and mesomorph, which functionally just means 3 different types of bodies with elemental compositions. So one is called the Vata, which is it's the thin bodied, it's the air and ether elements. It's those who have the natural constitution of leanness, long appendages, long features, because there's a lot of air there. They have great fast digestive systems, but it tends to be a little bit more difficult to put weight on or to put muscle on, whatever the case might be. And then you have, let's see, on the other end, the Kaphas, which is the earth and water elements, which are those who have some thickness, some broadness. There's some more density, whereas they can amass quite quickly, but to lose and shed takes a little bit more effort. And then you have in the middle the Pittas, which are the fire elements, which functionally it's kind of somewhere in the middle, but they tend to have a much more naturally muscular and toned body shape, which is somewhere in the middle, a little bit more proportionate. And so you have these 3 types. One is not better than another. Each of them has their strengths and the challenges that come with them, just like the Kaphas, or the thick, broad ones, which you can't tell so much from here, but I'm very much a Kapha. I've always been very stocky and dense, thick boned. And the Kaphas, there's so many benefits there. And that's why you find, you want to cuff a linebacker if you're trying to take something down, or we give a long example of that. But whereas, Kaphas, don't ask them to go for a long run typically, or whatever the case might be. Whereas, say on the other end, if you have a Vata, you'll see some of the biggest, like if we're talking about like from a physical standpoint, they're the ones that can get more endurance or whatever the case might be. But then if you ask them for like, you don't tend to see a lot of Vata, say power lifters, or, and then similarly Pittas in the middle of fire types. They're the ones that are achieving and doing crazy athletic stuff. And I mean, these are, again, oversimplifications, but you have these 3 types. And according to your physiognomy, if you figure out what your type is and you eat according to that type, then what you will do is you'll be eating in a way that will be balancing for yourself, as opposed to what's good or bad because some news article said so. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
And please.
Yeah. So as a, what did you say you were?
So with the Sanskrit word, is Kapha, which let's call it earth body. So we could say like earth body, fire body, and air body for the sake of simplicity.
Okay. Very, very interesting. And so what does your diet consist of?
Yeah. And so,
okay. So again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
please, no.
What would you say your diet consists of, and what, could you like maybe give just a little bit of insight onto what, maybe certain types should avoid?
Absolutely. Well, maybe we can start with what Ayurveda teaches for all body types, because there are a few things that just, it's like no matter who you are, what situation, there are some things that are universally beneficial. An example might be,
well, that's helpful. I think that'll be very helpful.
Some water, something like, water, Ayurveda goes beyond just quantity of water. It says, okay, it's got to be high quality water. Drink real water that has, natural minerals in it. And there's some prana or some life force there. Drink some spring water as opposed to dead water. So it's like you get into the quality of water. You also get into the quantity, which in general is usually you drink when you're thirsty. But if you need to measure, take half your body weight in ounces. So for example, like 140 pounds, drink about 70 ounces of water every day. And then you have the temperature, whereas the closer to your body temperature the water is, the more it'll digest and the more you'll absorb and the more hydrated. So it's like, it's not even just hydration. There's whole specific aspects of that. So an example being there's hydration. When we get into the actual food itself, the primary thing that Ayurveda teaches is that we want to eat whole foods. The idea is we want to minimize the time from the time it came out of the ground or off the tree and onto your plate. And we want to shorten that process as much as possible. And then another factor is we want to pre-digest that food so that your body can do the most with it possible. So for those of you into raw diets, no problem. Some bodies do better with it, aka the Pittas. Those who got that fire, they do a better job digesting it. But for most body types, raw isn't going to be the most optimal, because you'll notice if you look at from a chemical perspective of most food items, they have let's say a coating, or it's an enzyme complex that makes it very difficult to digest. That's why, for instance, there's a lot of food items that animals will not touch. because they go and they're like, this doesn't work. That's also why people like eat, say, a handful of nuts. We've all done this. We finish a bag of trail mix and we're like, oh my God, I want to die. Oh my God, my stomach, I'm tooting, lots of air moving through,
Right.
and it's like, because there's foods, like an example being nuts, that if they're not soaked or roasted, or the enzyme complex is broken down or separated, the body does not take as much of those in. So the first step is eat real food, the quickest it can from the time it, comes out of the ground and onto your plate, per se. And then the second aspect is do whatever you have to do to pre-digest that food, which means usually cook it gently. Some people say you lose the nutrients, but even if you do lose nutrients, you lose all the nutrients if you can't digest it. Example being, here's some raw rice. Eat the raw rice because it has the most nutrients. No, your body can't digest that rice. So, right? The whole idea is like pre-digest it and use spices to do that. You cook the food. There's a bunch of different things you do that. And then the third is, once you've done that, is then eat according to your body type. So the reason I say the third is because if somebody's, say, eating lots of processed food that's just not real, the body just doesn't know what it is. It's rejecting it. What to speak of having pesticides and toxins and just all these things that are causing the body harm. Even if you're eating those according to your body type, there's going to be negative effects. So make sure it's real. Make sure your body can digest it by pre-qualifying it, per se. And then the third step is eat according to your constitution. And the easiest way to do that according to each body type is think of complementary qualities. So an example is, if you have a lot of vata energy or air energy, where you notice it's like, okay, metabolism's quick. You consume, you want to put some, you want to put some mass on, or whatever the case might be, or you want to feel more satiated. The goal then is to eat foods with heavier, more grounding qualities, earthly qualities. Example might be root vegetables or different types of grains, or whatever the case may be. You want to eat foods that have those kinds of opposing qualities. Similarly, if you're kapha and you feel, okay, I can't digest so much, it could be a little lethargic if I eat too heavy, like eat foods that are very light and airy to digest. Or if you have a lot of heat, eat foods that are more cooling in nature. Eat your mints and your cucumbers. And anyway, without giving a long list of the examples, that the idea is complementary food items, so that you can feel that type of internal balance, so that ultimately you can use your strengths according to your unique bodily constitution as efficiently as possible.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's terrible news for me, because I've actually taken a test and to figure out what my body, my Ayurvedic body type was, and I do fall into the Pitta category, but I love spicy food.
That's right.
It's like
like attracts like. Yep.
Bummer. And
I mean, hey, believe me, as a kapha, as an earth body, I can body some sweets like they're going out of business. Well, and because like attracts like, but then as you start to bring in those complementary elements,
right,
any of those challenges or discomforts of the body start to minimize.
Yeah, I just have to trick myself into liking cucumbers.
Yeah,
not a big fan of cucumbers.
I get it.
That's awesome though. That makes a lot of sense, and that actually clarifies a lot for me, because those were definitely some questions I had. Because actually, I just took that test, I'd say maybe a couple months ago, and just took it, and then kind of went about my day and didn't really think too much about it. But I've really been I try to take as good of care of my body as I can for the most part. And, I'm really try to, be conscious of my diet. And so I think that's something that I definitely would like to pursue more of. So that kind of does shed a little bit of light on that for me. But so I'm big on, the mind, body, spirit connection. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to define terms there in terms of mind, body, and spirit connection. And
well, let's give us your terms.
Sure. So the way I would present it is that when we're talking about spirit, let's talk about that first. Mm-hmm. The way the ancient Vedic paradigm, or the ancient yoga literatures present that, and which is very similar around the conceptions around the world, but I've always liked the Vedic perspective, not only because it's the oldest written literatures, but I like detail and specificity. And the way they present the nature of the self or the soul or the spirit or whatever, whatever term you give for the unit of consciousness that we are. Mm-hmm. The idea is the spirit is the real you. It's the you that drives around the mind and the body, which we'll break down here next. And that's why, for instance, I say I have a body, or this is my hand, this is my hair. I don't say I hand or I hair or I. Or at least I hope you guys would say. And if somebody said that, you'd be like, "Uh-oh, we got a problem here." Why? It's because I own the hand, I own the hair, and who is the owner? It's the real me. It's the self. It's the soul. Right. And that's why somebody's not less of a person if they lose a limb. Right? Because we are not just the body. Also, every 7 years, every cell of your body's changed. So congratulations, everyone. After every 7 years, you've completely reincarnated. You've taken on new carne. If you're over 21, congrats. 3 reincarnations, over 28, 4. It's like this. We're constantly reincarnating, taking on new cells, taking on new carne per se. And so the idea then is, who is the real me? It's the self. It's the spirit. And then the mind is the Vedic perspective breaks the mind into 2 portions, the manasa and the buddhi, which is functionally the subconscious and conscious mind. In other words, we have the emotional reactionary mind, and then we have the deliberate conscientious mind. This is, we can all perceive this in ourselves. There's a part of us that just acts off default, that accepts and rejects. I like this. I don't like this. Wah. Then we also have the discerning part, which is like, if I do it this way and I do it at that time, then this will actually be best. And so we have 2 elements of the mind here, 2 functions of the mind. Actually, it's technically a third. It's called the false ego, but that'll be a digression. So we have different functions of the mind, 2 primary, the conscious and subconscious mind, with a flare of the what's called the false ego, the ahamkara. And then you have the body, which is the vehicle, which is the biomechanical robot. Right. And so one saying I always like to repeat to myself to make sure I remember, and you all can try it at home if you so desire, and that is, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, I'm something divine. I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, I'm something divine. To remind ourselves, oh yeah, that's right. My mind says you have to do this, you have to do that. And then if I say, wait a second, I'm not my mind. Like, I actually can control my mind. My mind doesn't have to control me. Or the body says, oh my God, you ever got a hangnail? It just ruins your life. He's like a tiny little hangnail. It's like, oh, you're like, oh wait, I'm not my body. Like, oh yeah, this will pass. And the mind's causing me, oh, that's right, this will pass. And then to that extent, the more that we relate on the level of the spirit, the soul, the unit of consciousness, then we're actually nourishing ourselves on the real level, on the actual level of the self. So in terms of how to harmonize these, which is functionally all Ayurveda is based off of, is keeping mind, body, and soul in alignment. The way that one does that is one understands the values in relationship to the self or the soul. And an example being, say, from a dharmic perspective, is of service, is like how to contribute. The goal is to serve and contribute and uplift and improve the quality of lives of others. So then therefore we train the mind and the body accordingly. And so the way that they alignment, or you could say the litmus test per se, to know if they are in alignment, is when your thoughts, words, and actions are in integrity, when they are lined up per se, in alignment. We'll notice that, because if our thoughts, words, and actions are moving in the same direction, that's how not only will one actually be able to have integrity in general, but that's how I actually know that mind, body, and soul are together, because everything is cooperating. Where if I'm thinking one thing, saying another, and then doing something else, inevitably we're going to have disharmony.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I'm sorry that for sure. Yeah, like my biggest thing is like, do my actions and my values align? That's my take on the what I put out into the world. It's like, do my actions align with my values? And if my actions don't align with my values, then obviously we're gonna have some trouble there. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's a really wonderful definition and a really wonderful explanation. So moving forward, like what are your plans for the future? What do you have in the works? Are you working on anything new? What do you got going on?
Yeah. How long you got? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, there's so much there, but the primary goal for me at this point is it's really trying to serve and empower others, because like I said, for years as an Ayurvedic practitioner, my goal is helping one-on-one. Like, so I help one person heal, but this last about 2.5 years ago, when I made the transition to more helping other wellness professionals, healers, practitioners, coaches, etc., it was really from this desire to, if I can then help other people who are then going to go help other people, then the impact is more exponential in that way. So let's say I have the capacity to work with about 30 people at a time, as opposed to just helping 30 people at a time. Now, each of them are going to go help 30. And so we're now talking about much bigger numbers of the impact. So the direction that I would like to go in, and we're heading in is really helping more people that can help more people. And so the primary, all of our clients, they're either wellness professionals, coaches, everything from also Ayurvedic practitioners to traditional Chinese medicine to physical therapists and therapists, everyone that's in that realm of they're already expert in improving the quality of lives of others. Meditation teachers, yoga teachers too, teacher trainers, studio owners. By helping them, I feel absolutely confident more and more people will be positively affected. Especially a lot of our programs are based off of teaching them how to then teach it to others. So it's like, it doesn't even have to stop there. It's just like, I like to say this is the good type of multi-level marketing, where it's like you help 30 people who are going to help 30 people who are going to help 30 people. And it's like integrity-based MLM schemes per se. And so that's the direction we're moving in. And, it's nice too, because with serving these types of individuals, we have retreats. Like example, we have a sold out India pilgrimage that I'll be taking 45 people to in a couple of months, and Italy, and these different types of experiences where we get to come together and do more like in-person communal events as well. Right. So like there's the idea of helping more people help, but also just bringing these kinds of powerful minds together to synergetically not only learn how to keep helping more people, but also just be with like-minded individuals, good association. And so those are the types of directions that I'm moving in. And ultimately the grandest of visions is just having these wellness centers on every corner, just like there might be a place of worship on any corner, on any given, you go outside, it's like a church, a synagogue, and like, cool, that helps. Cool. Fantastic. In the same way, we have like these wellness centers where people can go get a holistic upgrade in their life, specifically on the level of the mind, level of the physical, mental body. And then also my shtick is helping people monetize their thing too, because it's easy. It's just knowledge. It's just like somebody who knows snowboarding says it's easy. Somebody who knows law says it's easy. It's just a matter of taking the time to learn how to do it. And so those are the directions that I'm grateful to say I'm moving in. And, I have my plan, but that's not the ultimate plan. So let's see.
Right. Could you tell me a little bit more about the retreat you have coming up?
Sure. Yeah. So our retreats are primarily, say, the India pilgrimage that we have. We take people for 2 weeks to the sacred land of India, where we go everywhere from an eco village where there's just in the middle of nowhere, completely self-sustaining. And, we eat Ayurvedic meals all day long. And, and it's just like peaceful environment, to a flower festival, which is with thousands of people come from around the world to pretty much have like a musical meditation with a flower fight with literally tons, not exaggerating, tons of flower petals, to, go up to the Rishikesh towards the Himalayan mountains, where we stay on the river, the sacred river Ganges, where you look out the window and there's the Ganga, and go to ancient caves for meditating and that whole kind of experience. And then we go to what's considered the holiest place of India, which is called Vrindavan, where we take a few days to just go really deep into our own spiritual practice. And so, these are the types of things that we like to do, but that's pretty specific to India. We take people to India every year, and that's the specific kind of flavor there. But the other retreats are just kind of general yoga retreats, yoga, meditation, Ayurvedic, lifestyle, that type of stuff.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. How important do you think community is?
Well, there's what I think, and then there's what the data says, right? And fortunately, they're in alignment, and that is that 100% of humans want love and connection. Whether they use that term or not, it's true. And that's why anyone who gets in isolation gets severe mental challenges. I mean, that's everyone, all you got to do is watch some of these shows. They put someone in a hole in like solitary confinement. They come out just like a different human, deranged or whatever. It's like, that's what happens because we are social mammals. We are biologically social mammals. We are not meant to be alone in isolation in any way, shape, or form. There's traumas that scare people, myself included, into social communal environments, but that's our own challenge. Like that's a personal challenge that actually has nothing to do with our need for community, which is inherent and instinctual and necessary. So not only am I fully convinced of the value and the benefit of this type of community, and let me be very specific to say like-minded, healthy community, people who are ideally even above us, who are like-minded and moving in a direction that we want. And when I say above us, I mean to say if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
It's like, find people who know more than you and get in those kind of communities, etc. Not only is it essential to do that, but it's imperative for our advancement, actually, as individuals, because there's that saying, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. The idea that if you just show me the 5 people you spend the most time with, I'll let you know exactly who you're going to become because we are just influenced entities. And so to the extent that we can not only find quality community, but then attach ourselves in a way that we contribute, not just leech, like good community. What could I take? Right. But actually it's like, how can I contribute to a great community? To that extent, again, we're going to find fulfillment. Just, to the wonderful point that you were making earlier, it's like, that's where fulfillment comes. And also, no one can do it on their own anyway. They say if it takes a village to raise a child, what does it take to raise a spiritualist?
Right. That's great, man. So, okay, if you had like one bit of wisdom and you could only impart one thing to people, in this case, our listeners, what would that be?
It feels very clear and what's coming through, and I'll share what's completely changed my life. Like I'll share in terms of what is the most outrageously impactful thing I've ever done and attributed most of my success to.
Yeah, please do.
And that is cultivating a practice of what I say, chilling with divinity. And in simple, what that means and what that looks like is cultivating a divine practice where we spend dedicated time on a regular daily basis, welcoming divinity into our minds and chilling. And usually what that looks like, let's say from the ancient Vedic paradigm, which is what which is what made me so sold out to wanting to learn this philosophy and share it with others. It's like when you taste something so delicious, you're just like, oh my God, you guys got to try this.
Right.
And that is the practice of mantra meditation. I've learned many, many meditations, but the yoga perspective says mantra meditation is the highest because manasa trayate, the Sanskrit word man means mind and tra means to deliver or free. So mantra means to free, deliver the mind. What we're doing is we're taking divine syllables, which according to the Vedic perspective is divinity is absolute. And therefore, if you chant divine names, divinity is not bound by time and space like we are. So therefore, when we call out to the names of divinity, divinity can manifest present in our life, in our mind. And so by taking some time every day to chant these mantras, which consume the mind, because as opposed to trying to empty the mind, which is very difficult, mind don't work like that.
Good luck.
We want to consume. Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, have fun. 3 seconds, we're done. All right. It's like the idea is if we're engaging our mind with something great, like a mantra, which is of divine syllables of names for divinity, we're welcoming those times. We're taking designated time every day to spend some quality time with the other person in our body, according to the Vedic perspective, which is the super soul or divinity within. You have the Atma, the self, and you have the Paramatma or the super soul, the self within, the divinity within. When you spend some time there, that type of quality time one-on-one by chanting these divine names, everything else in life opens up. That's been my experience. And I mean, I guess there's a reason millions of people have done it for thousands and thousands of years, but that would be the most impactful practice that people can like immediately get experience. I like quick things. Obviously it happens better over time, more and more, but like you just sitting down, putting your stopwatch on for 5 minutes, turning anything off with an on or off switch off, telling everyone, hey, leave me alone for 5 minutes. I'm not available. And, and just sitting down, hit 5 minutes and you chant, say divine mantras, example being like a maha mantra or a great mantra. Like I'll just maybe chant once for sake of an example. And you sit there and you just repeat a mantra like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. And like that, you chant and you focus the mind on divine syllables. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And over. And what starts to happen is the mind wanders, but you can bring it back. Mind wanders, you bring it back. And then before you know it, naturally you start to feel better. Your mind starts to cooperate because you're strengthening that muscle of the mind. But then you also start to feel a sense of fulfillment, a sense of like deep divine connection, which if you tap into the electrical socket, you go and get that energetic source. So in that same way, tapping into divinity within.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate you having this conversation with me. It's actually been really, really beneficial for me because, like I said, I had so many questions just about Ayurveda in general, and you've answered a lot of those for me. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. So if people want to find you and would like to procure your services, so to speak, where can they do that at?
Well, before I say that, I'll just appreciate you too, because, it's such a labor of love to keep a podcast like this going. And I'm so grateful for those like yourself who take that labor of love and take so much time, attention, and energy to keep content like this going out so that we can actually come together and improve the quality of our lives. And so I just, thank you for what you shared. And I'd just like to thank you personally for all this time, energy, attention, and effort that you put into creating such a quality content for us to consume. The easiest way is we have lots of free groups. Well, one free group with lots of free content, which is called the Monk. Well, let's make this really simple. Anyone can reach me on any platform at madhu.life, madhu.life, madhu.life. And I always like to say my name is Madhu, like don't touch Madhu. Easy way to remember it. For those of you listening, not watching, touching my hair. Anyway, if you find me on any platform, madhu.life, and you drop me the word monk, M-O-N-K, what we'll do is we send you access to our free content. My whole purpose is just trying to give opportunities for anyone and everyone to be able to advance. Of course, we have professional services as well. So if you already are an expert and you know how to change people's lives and you want some support with that, we've got a bunch of free resources there as well. And then you can, my whole point is I like to start everyone with the free service-based stuff anyway, because I feel good about myself. And then inevitably, once you're in the system, every so often you might see some programs that come up where we can help serve you on a more personal, professional basis. But my whole purpose is try to help anyone who's ready to take some action. So just find me on any platform, send me the word monk, DM me, PM me, email me, info@madhu.life, wherever it might be. And then accordingly, I'll send you all the information and get you supported in one of these areas of life, either in terms of mindset, holistic health, or conscious entrepreneurialism. We've got resources for all of the above.
Awesome. Thank you again. I really do appreciate this. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Ditto. Thank you.